The morning sun cast long shadows across the Marine Corps training grounds at Parris Island, South Carolina. Recruits lined up in perfect formation, their faces stern with determination and barely contained anxiety. Among them stood Maria Santos, a petite 19-year-old from East Los Angeles, her small hands gripping the sides of her utility trousers as she waited for what would become one of the most defining moments of her military career. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maria had always been different from her peers. While her high school classmates were planning college parties and weekend trips to the beach, she was researching military occupational specialties and preparing for the physical fitness tests that would determine her future. Her decision to join the Marines hadn't been met with enthusiasm from her family. Her grandmother, a traditional Mexican woman who had raised Maria after her parents died in a car accident, couldn't understand why her granddaughter wanted to leave the safety of home for the dangerous world of military service. "Mia, you're so pequeña," her grandmother would say, holding Maria's hands in her weathered palms. "These hands, they're made for gentle things. For cooking, for healing, for holding babies, not for weapons of war." But Maria saw something different in her small hands. She saw precision, dexterity, and potential. Throughout her childhood, she had always been the one called upon to fix broken electronics, to thread needles for her grandmother's sewing projects, to perform delicate tasks that required steady fingers and unwavering focus. Her hands might have been small, but they were remarkably capable. The journey to Parris Island had been challenging enough. Basic training was designed to break down recruits and rebuild them as Marines, and Maria had faced her share of obstacles. She struggled with some of the physical requirements initially. The pull-ups were particularly difficult for someone of her slight build. But she had compensated with determination, spending extra hours in the gym working with her drill instructors to build the strength she needed. Her fellow recruits had noticed her immediately. In a sea of mostly larger, more imposing figures, Maria stood out. Some were supportive, recognizing her fierce determination and work ethic. Others were skeptical, wondering if someone so small could really handle the demands of Marine Corps service. The comments weren't always malicious, but they were constant reminders of her physical differences. "Santos, you sure you can handle that rifle?" One recruit had joked during their first weapons familiarization class. "Looks like it's bigger than you are." Maria had smiled politely, but inside she was taking note. She had always been underestimated because of her size, and she had learned to let her actions speak louder than her words. The rifle in question was the M16A4, a weapon that would become as familiar to her as her own reflection. It was standard issue for Marine recruits, a sophisticated piece of military equipment that required respect, understanding, and skill to operate effectively. The weapon itself was impressive, 39.63 inches in length, weighing 8.79 pounds when loaded. For someone like Maria, who barely topped 5 feet 3 inches and weighed less than 120 pounds, it was indeed a substantial piece of equipment. But size, as Maria was beginning to understand, wasn't everything. During their initial weapons training, Maria had paid attention to every detail. She studied the technical manual until she could recite the specifications from memory. She learned about the gas-operated, magazine-fed system that made the rifle function. She understood the importance of each component, from the bolt carrier group to the trigger mechanism. While other recruits complained about the boring technical aspects of weapons training, Maria absorbed every piece of information like a sponge. Her drill instructors noticed her dedication immediately. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, a veteran Marine with 3 combat deployments, had initially been concerned about Maria's ability to handle the physical demands of weapons training. But as the weeks progressed, he began to see something special in the young recruit. Santos approaches that rifle like a surgeon approaches a patient, he had told his fellow instructors. She's got a natural understanding of how things work. Together, the other recruits in Maria's platoon represented a diverse cross-section of American youth. There was Jackson, a former high school football player from Texas who stood 6 feet 4 inches and had arms like tree trunks. There was Williams, a quiet kid from rural Montana who had grown up hunting and seemed to have an intuitive understanding of firearms. There was Chun, a former computer programmer from California who approached everything with methodical precision. And then there was Maria, the smallest member of their group, who was slowly but steadily proving that size wasn't the determining factor in military success. Her small hands, which had initially been a source of amusement for some of her fellow recruits, were beginning to demonstrate advantages that larger hands couldn't match. As the weeks of basic training progressed, Maria's confidence grew. She was learning that the Marine Corps valued many qualities beyond physical size: mental toughness, attention to detail, leadership potential, and the ability to work as part of a team. Her small stature, rather than being a limitation, was teaching her to be creative, efficient, and precise in everything she did. The weapons training intensified as the recruits moved deeper into their basic training cycle. What had started as basic familiarization with the M16A4 had evolved into comprehensive instruction on weapon maintenance, marksmanship, and tactical employment. Maria found herself drawn to every aspect of the training, but it was during the weapons assembly and disassembly exercises that she truly began to shine. The first formal assembly test came during their 4th week of training. The drill instructors had arranged the recruits in a long line, each positioned behind a table with a completely disassembled M16A4. The components were laid out in no particular order: the bolt carrier group, the charging handle, the trigger mechanism, the buffer spring, the stock, the handguards, and dozens of smaller parts that all needed to come together in perfect harmony. "Listen up, recruits." Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's voice boomed across the training bay. "You have 15 minutes to completely assemble your weapon. This is not a race. It's a test of your knowledge, your attention to detail, and your ability to perform under pressure. A properly assembled weapon could save your life in combat. An improperly assembled weapon could end it." Maria stared down at the collection of parts in front of her. To an untrained eye, it looked like a complicated puzzle with dozens of pieces, but Maria saw something different. She saw a logical sequence, a series of interconnected systems that needed to work together. Her small hands hovered over the components as she mentally mapped out her approach. Around her, the other recruits were already beginning to work. Jackson, with his large hands, was struggling to manipulate some of the smaller components. His fingers, which were perfect for gripping a football, seemed almost too big for the delicate work required. Williams was working steadily, his experience with hunting rifles giving him a foundation, but the military weapon was more complex than anything he had handled before. Maria picked up the lower receiver, the heart of the weapon that would house the trigger mechanism and magazine well. Her small fingers easily navigated the tight spaces as she began installing the trigger group. Each component clicked into place with satisfying precision. Her hands moved with a fluidity that surprised even her. It was as if the weapon was designed to be assembled by someone with her dexterity. "Looking good, Santos," whispered Chen, who was working at the station next to her. "Your hands are like built for this." Maria smiled but didn't respond. She was completely focused on the task at hand, her mind processing each step of the assembly sequence. The bolt carrier group came next, sliding smoothly into the upper receiver. The charging handle followed, its installation requiring just the right amount of pressure and the proper angle. Her small hands allowed her to reach into spaces that were challenging for larger recruits, manipulating components with a precision that was becoming increasingly obvious to everyone around her. As the minutes ticked by, Maria's confidence grew. She was working faster than most of her fellow recruits, but more importantly, she was working with a level of accuracy that impressed the drill instructors. Her small hands, which had once been a source of jokes and skepticism, were proving to be perfectly suited for the intricate work of weapons assembly. The other recruits were beginning to notice. Jackson was struggling with the buffer spring, his large fingers having difficulty guiding the component into the narrow tube of the stock. Williams had assembled most of his weapon correctly, but was having trouble with the handguards, which required precise alignment and steady hands to install properly. Maria, meanwhile, was nearing completion. She had installed the bolt carrier group, attached the charging handle, and was now working on the final components that would complete her weapon. Her movements were smooth and confident, each action deliberate and precise. The small parts that were giving other recruits trouble seemed to jump into place in her hands. "Time!" Staff Sergeant Rodriguez called out, his voice cutting through the concentration of the recruits. Maria stepped back from her table, her weapon fully assembled and ready for inspection. She looked around and realized that she was one of only a handful of recruits who had completed the entire assembly within the time limit. More importantly, as the drill instructors moved through the line conducting their inspections, it became clear that her weapon was perfectly assembled. "Outstanding work, Santos," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez said as he examined her rifle. He pulled back the charging handle, tested the trigger mechanism, and checked the alignment of every component. "This is textbook perfect. How long did it take you?" Maria thought for a moment. She had been so focused on the work that she hadn't really paid attention to the time. "I'm not sure, Staff Sergeant. Maybe 10 minutes? The drill instructor made a note on his clipboard. "We'll be timing you next week. I have a feeling you're going to surprise us all." As the other recruits finished their work and began cleaning up their stations, Maria noticed the change in how they looked at her. The jokes about her small hands had stopped. Instead, there was a new respect in their eyes, a recognition that she brought something special to their unit. That evening, as the recruits cleaned their weapons and prepared for the next day's training, Maria reflected on the day's events. Her small hands, which had once been seen as a limitation, were becoming her greatest asset. She was beginning to understand that the Marine Corps wasn't just about physical strength or size. It was about finding ways to excel with the tools and abilities you possessed. Word of Maria's exceptional performance during weapons assembly began to spread throughout the training battalion. In the highly competitive environment of Marine Corps basic training, any recruit who demonstrated exceptional skills quickly became a topic of conversation among both fellow recruits and drill instructors. Maria's combination of speed, accuracy, and technical proficiency with the M16A4 had caught the attention of senior training staff, who were always looking for recruits who showed potential for advanced military occupational specialties. The following week brought more intensive weapons training, including timed assembly exercises that would push the recruits to their limits. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had decided to implement a new training protocol specifically designed to identify recruits with exceptional mechanical aptitude. The exercise was simple in concept but challenging in execution: complete weapon disassembly and reassembly under increasingly strict time constraints. "Today, we're going to separate the Marines from the wannabes," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez announced as the recruits filed into the weapons training bay. "You'll be working in pairs, and your partner will be timing your performance. We'll start with a generous 15-minute window and gradually reduce the time until we find out who among you has what it takes to handle weapons under combat conditions." Maria was paired with Jackson, the large recruit from Texas who had struggled with the previous week's assembly exercise. Despite his initial skepticism about Maria's abilities, Jackson had developed a grudging respect for her technical skills. As they prepared for the exercise, he offered some encouragement. "You got this, Santos," he said, setting up his stopwatch. "Just do what you did last week. The first round began with the 15-minute time limit. Maria approached the disassembled weapon with the same methodical mindset she had developed over the previous weeks. Her small hands moved with practiced precision, each movement economical and purposeful. She had studied the weapon's technical manual until she could visualize every component and its proper placement, and this mental preparation was paying dividends. As she worked, Maria could hear the struggles of other recruits around her. Some were rushing, making mistakes that would require them to backtrack and correct their work. Others were working too slowly, becoming increasingly frustrated as they realized they wouldn't meet the time limit. Maria maintained her steady pace, trusting in her preparation and her natural mechanical aptitude. "Time!" Staff Sergeant Rodriguez called out. Maria stepped back from her completed weapon. Jackson checked his stopwatch and shook his head in amazement. 12 minutes, 15 seconds, he reported. "And it looks perfect." As the drill instructors moved through the line conducting their inspections, it became clear that Maria had once again produced exceptional work. Her weapon was properly assembled, with every component in its correct position and properly secured. More importantly, she had completed the task faster than almost any other recruit in the platoon. "Outstanding work again, Santos," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez said as he examined her rifle. "Let's see how you do with reduced time limits." The second round imposed a 12-minute time limit, eliminating several recruits who had struggled with the initial exercise. Maria adjusted her approach slightly, moving with even greater efficiency while maintaining her focus on accuracy. Her small hands seemed to dance across the weapon components, guiding each part into its proper position with remarkable speed and precision. 10 minutes, 42 seconds, Jackson reported when the time was called. "I don't know how you do. It's Santos, it's like you got special hands or something." Maria smiled but remained focused. She was beginning to understand that her performance was exceptional, but she also knew that the real test was yet to come. The Marine Corps had a way of continuously raising the bar, and she suspected that Staff Sergeant Rodriguez wasn't finished challenging them. The third round brought the time limit down to 10 minutes, a constraint that eliminated more than half of the remaining recruits. Maria could feel the pressure mounting, not just from the time limit, but from the growing attention her performance was receiving. Other recruits had gathered around to watch, and she could see drill instructors from other platoons observing. As the exercise began, Maria forced herself to block out the distractions and focus solely on the task at hand. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, each motion refined through repetition and study. She had developed a rhythm, a sequence of movements that maximized her natural dexterity, while minimizing wasted motion. The weapon components seemed to flow together under her guidance. The lower receiver accepted the trigger group with smooth precision. The bolt carrier group slid into the upper receiver with satisfying accuracy. The charging handle, buffer spring, and stock assembly came together in perfect harmony. Her small hands navigated the tight spaces and delicate alignments with an ease that was becoming increasingly remarkable to everyone watching. 8 minutes, 57 seconds, Jackson announced, his voice filled with awe. "Perfect assembly." The gathered recruits erupted in spontaneous applause, a rare display of emotion in the normally rigid training environment. Maria felt a surge of pride and accomplishment, but she also sensed that this was just the beginning. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez was approaching with a look of determination that suggested he wasn't satisfied with her performance yet. "Santos," he said, his voice carrying across the now quiet training bay, "I want to see just how fast those hands of yours can work. Next round, 7 minutes. Think you can handle it?" Maria met his gaze steadily. "Yes, Staff Sergeant. I can handle it." The stage was set for what would become a legendary moment in the history of her training platoon. Maria's small hands, once the subject of jokes and skepticism, were about to prove that sometimes the most unlikely assets could produce the most extraordinary results. The training bay fell silent as Staff Sergeant Rodriguez prepared for what would become the most challenging weapons assembly test any of the recruits had ever faced. 7 minutes to completely disassemble and reassemble an M16A4 was pushing the boundaries of what was considered humanly possible for a recruit in basic training. Experienced Marines with years of practice might achieve such times, but for someone still learning the fundamentals, it seemed nearly impossible. Maria stood before the completely disassembled weapon, her small hands steady despite the intense scrutiny she was receiving. The other recruits had formed a semicircle around her station, their training temporarily suspended as everyone focused on what was about to unfold. Even drill instructors from other platoons had gathered to witness the attempt, creating an atmosphere of anticipation that was unusual for a routine training exercise. "Before we begin," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had served in combat zones around the world, "I want everyone to understand what we're witnessing here. Santos has demonstrated exceptional mechanical aptitude, but what we're about to ask of her goes beyond normal training standards. This is the kind of performance we might expect from a Marine with advanced technical training, not a recruit in her 6th week of basic training." Maria felt the weight of expectations settling on her shoulders, but rather than feeling intimidated, she found herself drawing strength from the challenge. Throughout her life, she had been underestimated because of her size, and each time someone had doubted her abilities, she had found a way to exceed their expectations. This moment felt like the culmination of years of proving herself, of showing that determination and skill could overcome physical limitations. The disassembled weapon lay before her in what appeared to be random arrangement, but Maria's trained eye could see the logical sequence hidden in the chaos. She had studied the weapon's technical manual so thoroughly that she could visualize the assembly process even with her eyes closed. More importantly, she had developed an almost intuitive understanding of how the components fit together, how each part related to the others in the complex mechanical system. "You have 7 minutes, Santos," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez said, his stopwatch ready. "Begin." Maria's hands moved with immediate purpose. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty in her movements. She picked up the lower receiver and began installing the trigger group, her small fingers navigating the tight spaces with remarkable efficiency. Each component clicked into place with satisfying precision, the sound of proper assembly echoing through the silent training bay. The gathered recruits watched in fascination as Maria's hands seemed to dance across the weapon components. Her movements were fluid, almost artistic in their precision. She had developed a rhythm that maximized her natural dexterity while minimizing any wasted motion. Every action had a purpose, every movement brought her closer to completing the assembly. Jackson, still serving as her timekeeper, found himself holding his breath as he watched Maria work. He had initially joined the Marines believing that physical size and strength were the primary determinants of military success. Watching Maria's performance was forcing him to reconsider those assumptions. Her small hands, which he had once viewed as a limitation, were proving to be perfectly suited for the intricate work of weapons assembly. 3 minutes gone, Jackson whispered, his voice barely audible in the silent training bay. Maria was making remarkable progress. The bolt carrier group had been installed with textbook precision. The charging handle was properly positioned, and she was now working on the more complex components that required the greatest dexterity. Her small hands allowed her to reach into spaces that would be challenging for larger recruits, manipulating components with a precision that was becoming increasingly impressive to everyone watching. The other recruits were witnessing something extraordinary. Chun, the former computer programmer, recognized the methodical approach that Maria was taking. "She's not just assembling a weapon," he whispered to Williams. "She's executing a perfectly planned sequence. Every movement is calculated." Williams nodded, his own experience with firearms giving him an appreciation for the technical skill Maria was demonstrating. "I've been hunting since I was 12, he said quietly, "and I've never seen anyone handle a weapon with that kind of precision. It's like she was born to do this." As the minutes continued to tick by, Maria's confidence grew. She was working faster than she had ever worked before, but she was also maintaining the accuracy that had become her trademark. Her small hands seemed to have an almost magical ability to guide components into their proper positions, to apply exactly the right amount of pressure, to achieve perfect alignment on the first attempt. 5 minutes, Jackson announced, his voice filled with amazement. Maria was nearing completion. The major components were in place, and she was now working on the final elements that would complete her weapon. Her movements remained smooth and confident, each action deliberate and precise. The small parts that had given other recruits trouble seemed to jump into place in her hands, as if they were eager to fulfill their purpose. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez watched with growing amazement. In his 15 years of military service, he had seen many exceptional Marines, but Maria's performance was something special. Her combination of technical knowledge, mechanical aptitude, and pure determination was creating a display of skill that would be remembered long after her training platoon had graduated and moved on to their military occupational specialties. 6 minutes, Jackson called out, his voice now filled with excitement. Maria was in the final stages of assembly, her small hands working with practiced efficiency to complete the last few connections. The weapon was taking shape under her guidance, each component finding its proper place in the complex mechanical system. Her focus was absolute, her movements precise, her confidence unwavering. The tension in the training bay was palpable as Maria entered the final minute of her 7-minute challenge. Her small hands continued their methodical work, installing the last few components with the same precision she had demonstrated throughout the entire assembly process. The gathered recruits and drill instructors watched in silent amazement as what had seemed impossible began to look inevitable. 6 minutes, 30 seconds, Jackson whispered, his voice barely audible in the hushed training bay. Maria was working on the final components now, the handguards, the front sight post, and the remaining hardware that would complete her weapon. Her small hands moved with practiced efficiency, each movement economical and purposeful. She had developed such familiarity with the weapon that she could identify components by touch alone, her fingers reading the metal surfaces like braille. The handguards required precise alignment and steady hands to install properly, components that had given many of her fellow recruits trouble during previous exercises. But Maria's small hands were perfectly suited for the delicate work, guiding the components into position with remarkable accuracy. The front sight post followed, its installation requiring just the right amount of pressure and the proper angle of approach. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As Maria worked, she was acutely aware of the historical significance of the moment. She was not just assembling a weapon, she was proving that the Marine Corps' emphasis on individual excellence could manifest in unexpected ways. Her small hands, which had once been seen as a limitation, were demonstrating that sometimes the most unlikely assets could produce the most extraordinary results. The other recruits were witnessing something that would change their understanding of what it meant to be a Marine. Physical size and strength were important, but Maria was proving that technical skill, mental preparation, and unwavering determination could be equally valuable. Her performance was redefining their conception of military excellence. 6 minutes, 45 seconds, Jackson announced, his voice filled with anticipation. Maria was in the final stages of assembly now, her small hands working with absolute precision to complete the last few connections. The weapon was nearly complete, each component in its proper place and properly secured. Her focus was absolute, her movements smooth and confident, her breathing steady and controlled. Staff Sergeant. Rodriguez found himself amazed by what he was witnessing. Maria's performance was not just technically impressive, it was inspiring. She was demonstrating qualities that the Marine Corps valued most highly: the ability to perform under pressure, the dedication to excellence, and the determination to exceed expectations regardless of the obstacles. The final components came together, under Maria's guidance, with satisfying precision. The last pin slid into place, the final connection was made, and the weapon was complete. Maria stepped back from her work, her small hands steady and confident, her expression calm despite the intensity of the moment. "Time!" she called out, her voice clear and confident. Jackson looked at his stopwatch in amazement. 6 minutes 58 seconds, he announced, his voice filled with awe. Perfect assembly. The training bay erupted in spontaneous applause, a rare display of emotion. In the normally rigid training environment, the gathered recruits and drill instructors had witnessed something extraordinary, a performance that exceeded all expectations and redefined what was possible for a recruit in basic training. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached Maria's station. With a look of profound respect, he examined the assembled weapon with the thoroughness of someone who had spent years working with military firearms. He pulled back the charging handle, tested the trigger mechanism, checked the alignment of every component, and verified that every connection was properly secured. "Outstanding work, Santos," he said, his voice carrying genuine admiration. "This is not just perfect assembly. This is exceptional performance by any standard. You've demonstrated technical skills that would be impressive for a Marine with years of experience." Maria felt a surge of pride and accomplishment, but she also understood that this moment was about more than just her individual performance. She was representing something larger, the idea that the Marine Corps was a place where anyone could excel if they brought the right combination of preparation, determination, and skill to their service. The other recruits gathered around to congratulate Maria, their earlier skepticism replaced by genuine respect and admiration. Jackson was among the first to shake her hand, his large fingers gentle as they clasped her small ones. "I owe you an apology, Santos," he said, his voice sincere. "I thought size was everything in the Marines. You've shown me that there are many different ways to be excellent." Williams nodded in agreement. "I've been around firearms my whole life, and I've never seen anything like what you just did. That was incredible." Chun, the former computer programmer, smiled knowingly. "I recognize the approach you were taking from the beginning. You treated that weapon like a complex system, understanding how every component related to every other component. That's the kind of thinking that produces exceptional results." As the excitement of the moment began to subside, Maria realized that her performance had accomplished something important. She had not only demonstrated her own capabilities, but had also shown her fellow recruits that the Marine Corps valued many different types of excellence. Her small hands, which had once been a source of jokes and skepticism, had become a symbol of the diverse talents that made the Corps strong. The news of Maria's exceptional performance spread through the training regiment like wildfire. Within hours, drill instructors from other platoons were stopping by to hear first-hand accounts of the recruit, who had assembled an M16A4 in under 7 minutes with perfect precision. The story grew with each telling, but the core facts remained consistent. A small recruit with exceptional mechanical aptitude had achieved something that seasoned Marines would find challenging. Colonel Patricia Morrison, the commanding officer of the training regiment, had built her career on identifying and developing exceptional Marines. With over 20 years of service, including combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, she had seen many recruits pass through the training pipeline. When she heard about Maria's performance, she knew she was witnessing something special. "I want to see this recruit," she told her staff. "If the reports are accurate, we may have someone with the potential for specialized training." The following day, Maria found herself standing at attention in the regimental commander's office, her small hands clasped behind her back as she waited for Colonel Morrison to speak. The office walls were decorated with photographs from the colonel's distinguished career, including images from combat zones where technical expertise and mechanical aptitude could mean the difference between life and death. "Recruit Santos," Colonel Morrison began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded Marines in combat. "I've been hearing remarkable things about your performance during weapons training. Your drill instructors tell me you've demonstrated exceptional mechanical aptitude. Is that assessment accurate?" "Yes, ma'am," Maria replied, her voice steady despite the intimidating nature of the situation. "I've always been good with my hands, and I've studied the weapon systems thoroughly." Colonel Morrison nodded approvingly. "I've reviewed your file, Santos. Your academic performance has been outstanding. Your physical fitness scores are improving steadily, and your leadership potential is evident. But it's your technical skills that have caught my attention. The Marine Corps has need for Marines with your particular talents." Maria felt a surge of excitement but maintained her composure. She had joined the Marines hoping to find a place where her unique abilities would be valued, and it seemed that her performance was opening doors to opportunities she hadn't even known existed. "I'm recommending you for advanced technical training," Colonel Morrison continued. "Upon completion of basic training, you'll be assigned to a military occupational specialty that will make full use of your mechanical aptitude. The Corps needs Marines who can work with complex weapon systems, who can perform under pressure, and who can maintain equipment in challenging environments." As Maria left the colonel's office, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Her small hands, which had once been seen as a limitation, were opening doors to advanced training and specialized roles within the Marine Corps. She was beginning to understand that the military valued many different types of excellence, and her particular combination of skills was proving to be exactly what the Corps needed. Back in the training bay, word of Maria's meeting with the colonel had spread throughout the platoon. The other recruits looked at her with a mixture of admiration and curiosity, understanding that she was being recognized for something special. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez gathered the platoon for what would become one of the most memorable training sessions of their basic training experience. "Today, we're going to conduct a special exercise," he announced. "Santos has demonstrated exceptional performance in weapons assembly, but I want to see if she can maintain that level of excellence under even more challenging conditions. We're going to test her abilities in a way that simulates the kind of pressure she might face in combat situations." The exercise that followed would become legendary in the training regiment. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had designed a scenario that would push Maria's abilities to their absolute limits while demonstrating to the other recruits the kind of performance that was possible when preparation met opportunity. The training bay was rearranged to create a more challenging environment. The lighting was dimmed to simulate low-light conditions. Background noise was introduced to create distractions. The weapon components were scattered across multiple tables, requiring Maria to move between stations while maintaining her focus on the assembly process. "You have 5 minutes," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez announced. "Complete disassembly and reassembly under combat conditions." Maria approached the challenge with the same methodical mindset she had developed over the previous weeks. The dimmed lighting and background noise were distracting, but she had learned to focus her attention completely on the task at hand. Her small hands moved with practiced efficiency, navigating between the different stations while maintaining the precision that had become her trademark. The other recruits watched in amazement as Maria adapted to the challenging conditions. Her movements remained smooth and confident, her focus unwavering despite the distractions. She had developed such familiarity with the weapon that she could work effectively even under adverse conditions, her small hands reading the components by touch when visual identification was challenging. 3 minutes, Jackson called out. his voice filled with excitement. Maria was making remarkable progress despite the challenging conditions. Her small hands seemed to have an almost magical ability to locate the correct components, to achieve perfect alignment even in low light, to maintain the rhythm and precision that had impressed everyone during previous exercises. The weapon was taking shape under her guidance, each component finding its proper place in the complex mechanical system. As the final minute approached, Maria's confidence grew. She was working faster than she had ever worked before, but she was also maintaining the accuracy that had become her signature. The challenging conditions had not diminished her performance. If anything, they had sharpened her focus and highlighted the exceptional nature of her abilities. The night before the ultimate test, Maria lay in her bunk reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought her to this pivotal moment. The combination of low lighting, background noise, and scattered components had created conditions that would challenge even experienced Marines. Yet Maria's small hands continued their methodical work with remarkable precision and efficiency. 4 minutes, 30 seconds, Jackson announced, his voice barely audible over the background noise that had been introduced to simulate combat conditions. Maria was working on the final components now, her small hands moving with practiced efficiency between the different stations. The weapon was nearly complete, each component in its proper place and properly secured. Her focus was absolute, her movements smooth and confident, despite the challenging conditions that surrounded her. The other recruits watched in silent amazement as Maria demonstrated abilities that seemed to transcend normal human limitations. Her small hands appeared to have developed an almost supernatural ability to locate the correct components, to achieve perfect alignment even in low light, to maintain the rhythm and precision that had impressed everyone during previous exercises. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez found himself witnessing something that would change his understanding of what was possible in military training. Maria's performance was not just technically impressive, it was inspiring proof that the Marine Corps' emphasis on individual excellence could manifest in ways that no one could have predicted. Her small hands, which had initially been seen as a limitation, were proving to be the perfect tools for precision work under pressure. 4 minutes, 45 seconds, Jackson called out, his voice filled with anticipation. Maria was in the final stages of assembly now, her small hands working with absolute precision to complete the last few connections. The weapon was taking its final form under her guidance, each component finding its proper place in the complex mechanical system. Her breathing remained steady, her movements controlled, her focus unwavering despite the intensity of the moment. The final components came together with satisfying precision. The last pin slid into place, the final connection was made, and the weapon was complete. Maria stepped back from her work, her small hands steady and confident, her expression calm despite the challenging conditions she had just overcome. Time, she called out, her voice clear and confident. Jackson looked at his stopwatch in complete amazement. 4 minutes, 28 seconds, he announced, his voice filled with awe. Perfect assembly under combat conditions. The training bay erupted in spontaneous applause that was even more enthusiastic than before. The gathered recruits and drill instructors had witnessed something that transcended normal training expectations, a performance that would be remembered and talked about for years to come. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached Maria's station with a look of profound respect mixed with genuine amazement. He examined the assembled weapon with the thoroughness of someone who had spent years in combat zones, someone who understood that proper weapons assembly could mean the difference between life and death in real-world situations. "Santos," he said, his voice carrying genuine admiration, "what you've just accomplished is extraordinary. You've not only demonstrated exceptional technical skills, but you've shown that you can maintain that level of performance under adverse conditions. This is the kind of ability that saves lives in combat." Maria felt a surge of pride, But she also understood that this moment represented something larger than her individual achievement. She was demonstrating that the Marine Corps was a place where anyone could excel, if they brought the right combination of preparation, determination, and natural ability to their service. The other recruits gathered around to congratulate Maria, their expressions showing a mixture of admiration, respect, and genuine friendship. The earlier skepticism about her abilities had been completely replaced by recognition of her exceptional talents. "I can't believe what I just witnessed," Williams sighed, shaking his head in amazement. "I've been around firearms my whole life, and I've never seen anything like that." "You made it look easy." Chun nodded enthusiastically. "The way you adapted to those conditions was incredible. Most people would have been thrown off by the distractions, but you just incorporated them into your process." Jackson stepped forward, his large hand extended toward Maria's small one. "Santos, I want to apologize again for ever doubting you. You've shown all of us what real excellence looks like. Those hands of yours are amazing." As the excitement of the moment began to settle, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez called for the platoon's attention. "What you've witnessed today is a demonstration of what's possible when natural ability meets dedication and preparation. Santos didn't achieve this level of performance by accident. She earned it through study, practice, and unwavering commitment to excellence." He paused, looking directly at Maria. "But I have a feeling we haven't seen the limits of what Santos can achieve. Tomorrow, we're going to conduct one final test. We're going to see just how fast those remarkable hands can work when everything is on the line." Maria felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with nervous excitement. She had already exceeded every expectation, but she sensed that Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had something special in mind for the final test. Her small hands, which had carried her this far, would soon face their ultimate challenge. Maria's small hands exploded into motion with a speed and precision that seemed to defy human limitations. Maria's small hands exploded into motion with a speed and precision that seemed to defy human limitations. Her movements were fluid, almost balletic, as she guided components into their proper positions with remarkable efficiency. Each action flowed seamlessly into the next, her small hands working with the kind of precision that could only be achieved through perfect understanding and countless hours of practice. The lower receiver was in her hands first, the trigger group sliding into place with mechanical perfection. Her small fingers, perfectly suited for the intricate work, navigated the tight spaces with ease that left the observers speechless. The bolt carrier group followed, its installation requiring precise alignment that her hands achieved without hesitation. 5 seconds. Someone whispered in amazement. Maria's hands continued their incredible dance across the weapon components. The charging handle snapped into position with satisfying precision. The buffer spring and stock assembly came together under her guidance as if the components were magnetically attracted to their proper places. Her small hands seemed to have an almost supernatural ability to guide each part exactly where it needed to go. The upper and lower receivers came together with perfect alignment, the pins sliding into place with mechanical precision that spoke to years of practice compressed into moments of pure execution. Maria's breathing remained steady, her focus absolute, her confidence unwavering as she approached the final stages of the assembly. 10 seconds, Jackson called out, his voice filled with awe. The handguards required the most delicate touch, and Maria's small hands were perfectly suited for the task. Her fingers worked with surgical precision, achieving perfect alignment on the first attempt. The front sight post followed, its installation requiring just the right amount of pressure applied at exactly the right angle. The final components came together under Maria's guidance with satisfying precision that seemed to echo through the silent training bay. Every pin, every connection, every mechanical interface achieved perfect alignment under the guidance of hands that had been transformed from objects of mockery into instruments of mechanical artistry. Time! Maria called out, Stepping back from the completed weapon, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez looked at his stopwatch, his expression showing complete disbelief. The silence in the training bay was deafening as everyone waited for the announcement. That would either confirm the impossible or reveal that even exceptional ability had its limits. 12 seconds, he announced, his voice barely above a whisper. Perfect assembly in 12 seconds. The training bay erupted in cheers that could be heard throughout the entire regiment. Maria Santos, the small recruit whose hands had once been mocked, had just achieved something that would be remembered as one of the most remarkable feats in Marine Corps training history. But the celebration was just beginning. Colonel Morrison stepped forward, her expression showing a mixture of professional amazement and genuine pride. Santos, what you've just accomplished transcends normal training achievements. You've demonstrated capabilities that will change how we think about individual potential in the Marine Corps. The weapon was immediately subjected to the most thorough inspection possible. Every component was checked, every connection verified, every mechanical interface examined by experts who had spent years working with military firearms. The verdict was unanimous: perfect assembly executed in record time. This isn't just about speed, explained Master Gunnery Sergeant Williams, a weapons specialist who had been brought in to observe the test. Santos has demonstrated complete mastery of a complex mechanical system. The precision required to achieve this level of performance is extraordinary by any standard. Maria stood at attention as the inspection continued, her small hands clasped behind her back, her expression showing quiet confidence mixed with appropriate military bearing. She had pushed herself to the absolute limits of her abilities and had achieved something that exceeded even her own expectations. The other recruits gathered around, their expressions showing a mixture of admiration, respect, and genuine friendship. The journey from skepticism about her small hands to witnessing her legendary achievement had been transformative for all of them. "I don't think I'll ever forget what I just saw," William said, shaking his head in amazement. "That was the most incredible demonstration of mechanical skill I've ever witnessed." Chun nodded enthusiastically. "The precision and speed you displayed was like watching a perfectly optimized machine. Every movement had purpose, every action was calculated for maximum efficiency." Jackson stepped forward, his expression showing genuine respect and admiration. "Santos, I want to thank you for showing all of us what's possible when someone refuses to accept limitations. You've changed how I think about excellence." As the immediate excitement began to settle, Maria realized that this moment represented more than just individual achievement. She had demonstrated that the Marine Corps was a place where exceptional ability could be recognized and developed, regardless of initial appearances or expectations. Her small hands, which had once been seen as a limitation, had just achieved something that would become legendary in Marine Corps training history. But more importantly, she had proven that sometimes our greatest perceived weaknesses can become our most valuable strengths. In the hours that followed Maria's legendary 12-second assembly, the training bay remained electric with excitement and disbelief. In the hours that followed Maria's legendary 12-second assembly, the training bay remained electric with excitement and disbelief. What had just occurred seemed almost impossible to believe. A recruit in basic training had achieved something that would challenge experienced Marines with years of specialized training. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez stood before the assembled group, his expression showing a mixture of professional pride and genuine amazement. "What we've witnessed today transcends normal training achievements," he announced. "Santos has demonstrated capabilities that will change how we think about individual potential in the Marine Corps." Colonel Morrison stepped forward, her expression showing the kind of respect reserved for truly exceptional performances. As someone who had spent years in combat zones where weapons reliability could mean the difference between life and death, she understood the significance of what she had just witnessed. "Recruit Santos," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded Marines in some of the most challenging environments on Earth. What you've just demonstrated is not just exceptional, it's historically significant. I've seen experienced armorers who couldn't match the performance you just delivered. The implications of Maria's achievement were beginning to sink in among the observers. Representatives from various military occupational specialty schools were already discussing advanced training opportunities that had never been offered to recruits before. Weapons specialists from Quantico were talking about incorporating Maria's techniques into updated training protocols. But perhaps the most significant impact was on Maria's fellow recruits, who had witnessed firsthand the transformation of someone they had initially doubted into someone who had achieved the impossible. The journey from skepticism about her small hands to witnessing her legendary performance had been transformative for all of them. "I keep replaying what I just saw," Jackson said, shaking his head in amazement. 12 seconds. "I've been trying to understand how it's even physically possible to move that fast while maintaining perfect precision." Williams nodded enthusiastically. "I've been around firearms my whole life, and I thought I understood what was possible. Maria just showed me that there are levels of excellence I never imagined." Chun, ever the analyst, was fascinated by the technical aspects of what he had witnessed. The efficiency of movement was incredible. Every action had multiple purposes. Every motion was optimized for maximum effectiveness. It was like watching a perfectly executed algorithm. Dr. Sarah Chun, the biomechanics expert who had been brought in to observe the test, was already making notes for her report. Santos' performance represents a unique combination of natural physical advantages, developed skill, and psychological preparation, she explained to the assembled officers. Her small hands provide advantages in dexterity and precision, but the real achievement is how she's developed those natural gifts through dedication and practice. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached Maria, his expression showing the pride of an instructor who had witnessed something truly special. "Santos, when you first arrived here, some people questioned whether your small hands would be an asset or a limitation. You've answered that question in the most definitive way possible." But Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had one more surprise for Maria and the assembled observers. He had been in communication with the highest levels of Marine Corps leadership, and they had authorized something unprecedented. "Santos," he announced, "based on your exceptional performance and the capabilities you've demonstrated, the Marine Corps is offering you opportunities that have never been extended to a recruit in basic training. You're being fast-tracked for advanced technical training and consideration for specialized programs that typically require years of experience." Maria felt a surge of excitement mixed with humble gratitude. Her journey from being mocked for her small hands to receiving recognition at the highest levels of the Marine Corps had been transformative, but she understood that this was just the beginning. "I'm honored by the recognition, Staff Sergeant," she replied, her voice showing the confidence that had developed through weeks of exceeding expectations. "I'm ready for whatever challenges and opportunities come next." The media attention was inevitable and swift. News outlets picked up the story of the small recruit who had achieved something extraordinary, and Maria found herself representing more than just individual achievement. She had become a symbol of how the military could recognize and develop exceptional talent, regardless of initial appearances or expectations. "When I first joined the Marines, people questioned whether my small hands would be an asset or a limitation," Maria told a reporter from Marine Corps Times. "What I've learned is that the military values many different types of excellence. My hands might be small, but they're capable of remarkable things when properly trained and applied." The story resonated far beyond the military community, reaching people who had been underestimated because of their physical differences, students who had been told they weren't suited for technical fields, and anyone who had ever been judged based on appearances rather than capabilities. Rent, as she began to identify each part through tactile examination. The lower receiver felt familiar under her fingers, its contours and mounting points easily recognizable. The bolt carrier group had its own distinctive weight and balance that her hands had learned to recognize instantly. As she began the assembly process, Maria's small hands moved with even greater precision than usual. Without the distraction of visual input, she was able to focus completely on the tactile feedback that her fingers were providing. Each component had its own unique feel, its own pattern of surfaces and edges that made it identifiable to her trained touch. The gathered observers watched in amazement as Maria's small hands worked with blind precision, guiding components into their proper positions with remarkable accuracy. Her movements were slower than usual, but they were also more deliberate, more careful, as she relied entirely on her sense of touch to navigate the complex assembly process. "This is incredible," Williams whispered to Chun. "She's not just assembling a weapon blindfolded, she's doing it with complete confidence." The tension in the training bay was palpable as Maria continued her blindfolded assembly, her small hands moving with careful precision across the weapon components. Every observer understood they were witnessing something extraordinary, a demonstration of mechanical mastery that transcended normal human capabilities and entered the realm of artistry. Maria's fingertips read the metal surfaces like Braille, identifying each component not just by its shape, but by subtle variations in texture, weight distribution, and balance points. Her small hands had developed such sensitivity that she could detect the slightest misalignment or improper seating of components, making corrections with gentle adjustments that would have been impossible for someone with less developed tactile skills. "The trigger group is going in perfectly," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez observed quietly, his voice filled with professional admiration. "She's achieving proper alignment purely by touch. I've never seen anything like this." Colonel Morrison nodded, her expression showing the kind of respect reserved for truly exceptional performances. "This isn't just mechanical aptitude," she said. "This is an almost intuitive understanding of how complex systems work. She's not just assembling a weapon, she's having a conversation with it." Maria's small hands continued their methodical work, each movement deliberate and precise. The bolt carrier group slid into the upper receiver with perfect alignment, guided by fingers that could detect variations in fit and finish that would be imperceptible to most people. Her touch was so refined that she could identify proper component seating by the subtle changes in resistance and the barely audible clicks of parts finding their intended positions. The other recruits watched in respectful silence, understanding that they were witnessing something that would become legend in the training regiment. Maria's journey from being mocked for her small hands to demonstrating capabilities that amazed seasoned professionals had been transformative, not just for her, but for everyone who had witnessed it. "She's installing the charging handle now," Jackson whispered, his voice filled with awe. "Her fingers are so precise that she can feel the proper alignment without being able to see it." Maria's small hands guided the charging handle into position, with gentle pressure, her fingertips detecting the exact moment when the component seated properly. The buffer spring and stock assembly followed, each part finding its place under the guidance of hands that had developed an almost supernatural sensitivity to mechanical feedback. As the assembly neared completion, Maria's confidence grew. Her small hands moved with increasing assurance, each movement flowing smoothly into the next. The weapon was taking shape under her guidance, each component finding its proper place in the complex mechanical system despite the complete absence of visual guidance. The final components came together with satisfying precision. Maria's small hands performed the last few connections with the same careful attention to detail she had maintained throughout the entire process. When the final pin slid into place, she paused for a moment, her hands resting gently on the completed weapon. "Assembly complete," she announced, her voice calm and confident. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez stepped forward to remove the blindfold, his expression showing anticipation mixed with professional curiosity. As the blindfold came away, Maria blinked in the bright light of the training bay, her eyes adjusting to the visual input that had been denied to her during the assembly process. The weapon before her was perfectly assembled, every component in its proper place and correctly secured. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez conducted his most thorough inspection yet, checking every connection, testing every mechanism, verifying that the weapon was ready for service. "Perfect," he announced, his voice filled with genuine amazement. "Absolutely. Perfect assembly completed entirely by tactile feedback. This is the most remarkable demonstration of mechanical mastery I've witnessed in 15 years of military service." The training bay erupted in applause that was more enthusiastic than any previous demonstration. The gathered recruits, drill instructors, and senior staff understood that they had witnessed something truly extraordinary, a performance that would be remembered and discussed for years to come. But Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had one final surprise. He had been in communication with the regiment's senior staff, and they had agreed to attempt something that had never been tried before. With a recruit in basic training. "Santos," he said, his voice carrying a mixture of excitement and professional challenge, "we have one final test for you. We want to see if you can achieve something that we've never seen before. Complete disassembly and reassembly in under 15 seconds. The challenge was unprecedented. Even experienced Marines rarely attempted such rapid assembly, and it was virtually never expected of recruits. But Maria's performance throughout the training cycle had been so exceptional that the senior staff wanted to see if she could achieve something that would become legendary in Marine Corps training history. Maria felt a surge of excitement mixed with nervous anticipation. This was the ultimate test of everything she had learned, everything she had practiced, everything her small hands had become capable of achieving. She understood that this moment would define not just her own military career, but potentially change how the Marine Corps thought about individual capabilities and potential. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady and confident. The completely disassembled weapon was placed before her, the components arranged in the standard configuration. Maria took a moment to center herself, her small hands resting calmly at her sides as she mentally prepared for the challenge ahead. The training bay fell silent as everyone present understood they were about to witness either the most remarkable demonstration of mechanical mastery in training history, or the limits of what even exceptional ability could achieve under extreme pressure. "Begin," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez commanded. Maria's small hands exploded into motion with a speed and precision that seemed to defy human limitations. Her movements were fluid, almost balletic, as she guided components into their proper positions. With remarkable efficiency, each action flowed seamlessly into the next, her small hands working with the kind of precision that could only be achieved through perfect understanding, and countless hours of practice. The seconds ticked by as Maria's remarkable performance unfolded before the amazed observers. Her small hands, once the subject of jokes and skepticism, were about to achieve something that would become the stuff of Marine Corps legend. "Time," Maria called out, stepping back from the perfectly assembled weapon. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez looked at his stopwatch, his expression showing complete disbelief. 12 seconds, he announced. Perfect assembly in 12 seconds. The training bay erupted in cheers that could be heard throughout the entire regiment. Maria Santos, the small recruit whose hands had once been mocked, had just achieved something that would be remembered as one of the most remarkable feats in Marine Corps training history. The graduation ceremony that marked the end of Maria's basic training was unlike any that had been held at the training regiment in recent memory. Word spread through the base with unprecedented speed, and within hours, Marines from other units were arriving to hear first-hand accounts of what had happened. The story seemed almost too incredible to believe. A recruit in basic training had achieved something that veteran Marines with decades of experience would find challenging. Colonel Morrison immediately convened a meeting with the senior staff to discuss the implications of Maria's performance. The 12-second assembly wasn't just a training achievement. It was a demonstration of capabilities that could have significant impact on military operations, weapons training protocols, and the identification of exceptional talent within the Marine Corps. What we witness today changes how we think about individual potential, Colonel Morrison told her staff. Santos has demonstrated that exceptional ability can manifest in ways we never expected. Her small hands, which initially seemed like a limitation, have proven to be perfectly adapted for precision work that others find impossible. Meanwhile, Maria found herself at the center of attention that was both exciting and overwhelming. Her fellow recruits treated her with a mixture of admiration and genuine friendship, understanding that her achievement reflected well on their entire platoon. The skepticism and jokes about her small hands had been completely replaced by recognition of her extraordinary capabilities. "I still can't believe what I saw," Jackson said as the platoon gathered for their evening meal. 12 seconds. "I've been timing myself and I can't even pick up all the pieces in 12 seconds, let alone assemble the whole weapon." Williams nodded enthusiastically. "I've been around firearms my whole life, and I've never seen anything like that. It was like watching magic happen." Chun, ever the analyst, was fascinated by the technical aspects of Maria's performance. "The way you moved through that assembly sequence was like watching a perfectly optimized algorithm. Every movement had a purpose, every action was calculated for maximum efficiency." Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached Maria during the evening meal, his expression showing a mixture of pride and professional excitement. "Santos, I want you to know that what you accomplished today is going to have implications far beyond basic training. The Marine Corps is already discussing advanced training opportunities that we've never offered to recruits before." Maria felt a surge of excitement mixed with nervous anticipation. Her journey from being mocked for her small hands to achieving something legendary had been transformative, but she understood that this was just the beginning. The Marine Corps was a vast organization with many opportunities for those who demonstrated exceptional abilities. "I'm ready for whatever comes next, Staff Sergeant," she said, her voice showing the confidence that had developed over the weeks of training. The following days brought a parade of visitors to the training regiment. Weapons specialists from Quantico arrived to observe Maria's techniques and to understand how her small hands enabled such exceptional performance. Representatives from various military occupational specialty schools came to discuss advanced training opportunities that would make full use of her unique abilities. Dr. Sarah Chun, a biomechanics expert from the Marine Corps Research Laboratory, conducted a detailed analysis of Maria's hand structure and movement patterns. "Santos' hands exhibit several characteristics that contribute to her exceptional performance," she explained to the assembled officers. "Her finger length ratios provide optimal dexterity for fine motor tasks. Her joint flexibility allows for precise manipulation in confined spaces, and her tactile sensitivity is remarkably developed." But Dr. Chun was careful to emphasize that Maria's abilities weren't just a result of physical advantages. Her performance is the result of natural gifts enhanced by dedication, study, and practice. She's developed her capabilities through hard work and determination, not just natural ability. The media attention was inevitable. News outlets picked up the story of the small recruit who had achieved something extraordinary, and Maria found herself representing more than just individual achievement. She had become a symbol of how the military could recognize and develop exceptional talent, regardless of initial appearances or expectations. "When I first joined the Marines, people questioned whether my small hands would be an asset or a limitation," Maria told a reporter from Marine Corps Times. "What I've learned is that the military values many different types of excellence. My hands might be small, but they're capable of remarkable things when properly trained and applied." The story resonated. with people far beyond the military community. Maria received letters from young women who had been discouraged from pursuing their goals because of physical differences, from students who had been told they weren't suited for technical fields, from anyone who had ever been underestimated because of their appearance. Her grandmother, now in her 70s, traveled from Los Angeles to attend Maria's graduation from basic training. The elderly woman who had once worried that her granddaughter's small hands were too gentle for military service now watched with pride as Maria received recognition for exceptional achievement. "Mia," her grandmother said, holding Maria's small hands in her weathered palms, "I was wrong about these hands. They're not just made for gentle things, they're made for great things." The graduation ceremony was unlike any that had been held at the training regiment. Colonel Morrison had invited senior officers from across the Marine Corps to witness the recognition of what she called the most remarkable demonstration of individual excellence in recent memory. As Maria stood at attention during the ceremony, her small hands clasped behind her back, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the initial skepticism about her abilities to the legendary 12-second assembly, she had proven that determination and dedication could overcome any initial disadvantage. The graduation ceremony concluded with Maria receiving not just the standard recognition for completing basic training, but also special commendations for exceptional performance that would become part of Marine Corps' training history. As she stood before the assembled Marines holding her certificates and awards, Maria understood that her journey was far from over. It was just beginning. The assignments that followed graduation reflected the Marine Corps' recognition of Maria's unique abilities. She was selected for advanced technical training that would prepare her for specialized roles involving precision weapon systems, advanced maintenance protocols, and training instruction. Her small hands, which had once been seen as a limitation, were now recognized as valuable assets that could contribute to the Corps' mission in unprecedented ways. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, who had been instrumental in recognizing and developing Maria's abilities, was asked to document her training methods and techniques for inclusion in updated training manuals. The lessons learned from Maria's success would be used to identify and develop other Marines with similar potential. Santos taught us that exceptional ability can manifest in unexpected ways, he explained to a group of training instructors. Our job isn't to force everyone into the same mold, it's to recognize individual strengths and find ways to maximize their potential for the benefit of the Corps. Maria's first assignment after advanced training was to a specialized weapons unit where her skills could be fully utilized. Her small hands, combined with her deep understanding of mechanical systems, made her invaluable for maintaining and repairing complex weapon systems that other Marines found challenging to work with. But perhaps more importantly, Maria became a mentor and instructor for other Marines who brought unique abilities to their service. She developed training programs that emphasized precision over speed, technique over strength, and understanding over rote memorization. Her approach helped identify and develop capabilities in Marines who might otherwise have been overlooked. Legend of the 12-second assembly continued to grow within the Marine Corps. New recruits arriving at training heard the story and understood that the Corps valued many different types of excellence. Maria's achievement became a symbol of how dedication, preparation, and natural ability could combine to produce extraordinary results. Years later, as a senior non-commissioned officer, Maria would return to the training regiment as an instructor. Standing before new recruits, her small hands now bearing the calluses and scars of years of service, she would share her story not as a tale of individual achievement, but as a lesson about the power of perseverance and the importance of recognizing potential in unexpected places. When I first arrived here, some people questioned whether my small hands would help or hurt my military career, she would tell new recruits. What I learned is that the Marine Corps doesn't care about your size, your background, or your initial limitations. What matters is your willingness to work hard, to learn, and to contribute to something larger than yourself. Her story became required reading in leadership courses throughout the Marine Corps. Officers studied her case as an example of how to identify and develop exceptional talent, how to look beyond initial appearances to recognize potential, and how to create training environments that allowed individual excellence to flourish. The impact of Maria's achievement extended far beyond the military. Her story was featured in books about overcoming obstacles, in articles about women in the military, and in presentations about the importance of diversity in organizations. She became a symbol of how dedication and perseverance could overcome any initial disadvantage. Maria's small hands, which had once been the subject of jokes and skepticism, had become legendary within the Marine Corps. New recruits would ask to see the training bay, where she had achieved her 12-second assembly, and drill instructors would point to her photograph on the wall as an example of what was possible when natural ability met dedication and proper training. But Maria herself remained humble about her achievements. She understood that her success was not just about individual ability, but about the Marine Corps' willingness to recognize and develop exceptional talent regardless of its initial appearance. Her small hands had been the tool, but the real achievement was the Corps' commitment to finding and maximizing the potential of every Marine. The legacy of Maria Santos and her remarkable small hands continued to inspire new generations of Marines. Her story became part of the Corps' oral tradition, passed down from drill instructors to recruits, from senior Marines to junior Marines, as a reminder that excellence could manifest in the most unexpected ways. As Maria progressed through her military career, earning promotions and recognition for her continued exceptional performance, she never forgot the lessons learned during those transformative weeks of basic training. Her small hands had carried her from skepticism to legend, but more importantly, they had taught her that the Marine Corps was a place where anyone could excel if they brought the right combination of dedication, preparation, and determination to their service. The story of the Marines who laughed at her small hands until she assembled her rifle in 12 seconds became more than just a tale of individual achievement. It became a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of recognizing potential in unexpected places, and the truth that sometimes our greatest perceived weaknesses can become our most valuable strengths. Maria Santos had proven that small hands could achieve great things, and in doing so, she had changed not just her own destiny, but the way the Marine Corps thought about individual potential and the many different forms that excellence could take. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.